Hey everybody, it's Christina, the Tarot Biz Mentor here, and today I'm going to show you how to do a really good mediumship reading with tarot cards. So I'm actually doing this live, so if you're watching on YouTube, this is a replay, so highly recommend you come over and join my group on Facebook. It's called The Profitable Psychic, and we have a lot of free trainings like this, and the community is just a really great place to meet with other professional psychics, other professional tarot readers, and we have so many threads for you to go through, so much. This group has been around for about 3 or 4 years now, so there's just a lot to it. A lot of stuff that you can really, sit for quite some time and really get some good information. So if you are joining me, I see a couple people are here. If you can hear and see me okay, let me know in the comments below that you can hear and see me okay. And we'll go ahead and get started here in just a moment. Okay, so Halloween is coming up. Halloween or Samhain, just depending on what you celebrate, is basically the start. Actually, probably the last tail end of September is always the start of the busy season for us tarot readers. Hey Cece. Hey Svetlana, good to see you. Hey Julie, good to see you. Good to see you. Tina, hi. So we are just about to hit, what's today's date? It's August 16th, so we're about halfway through August. Hi Erica, thank you so much. And we are about to hit the busy season. The busy season is going to start probably around about 2 weeks before the end of September. We're going to stay busy until probably around Christmas. There'll be a short lull during Christmas, and then we'll be right back to busy January, February, first 2 weeks of March. Hey, Cece, good to see you. Hi, Danny. So we're going to be really busy here coming up soon. And one type of reading that always sells really well during this start of the busy season is mediumship reading. So let me know in the comments below, are you a medium? Do you consider yourself a medium? Do you do mediumship readings as a service, as a psychic service, or are you like kind of still tiptoeing around claiming the medium title? Like, tell me what you guys are, like, where you guys are coming from with this. I really struggled in the very beginning for a really long time because I had a lot of misconceptions, and of course this conversation right here could be a whole other video, but I had a lot of conceptions about what it meant to be a medium, and for a really long time I didn't think that you could be a medium through tarot cards. I thought for a really long time that mediums were only really legit mediums if they got their information directly from source. But I had this conflicting, that's what I thought, like that was the limiting belief that I had, right? So for a really long time I didn't claim the title medium, and then I started actually taking psychic development courses, mediumship courses, and then I learned how to basically do mediumship readings without the use of cards. But the whole time I would just, every time I'd be doing a reading for someone, not every time, but sometimes, like, let me know if you can relate to this. Sometimes I'll be doing a reading for someone and you will just have spirits come through the cards, or you'll have court cards that will come up and they will, you just have it's like, it's not in every single reading, but you just have the intuitive hit that it's talking about someone that maybe has passed on. Like, how many of you have actually experienced something like that? Tina says she's a medium. Julie is a medium and she's a platform medium. Danny says she's tiptoeing a little bit. Okay. Cece says yes, she's a medium, but she's just getting back into it. She's a little bit rusty. Okay, great. So we have a wide variety. We have people that are like, yes, I'm a medium. We have people that are, yes, I'm a medium, but I'm not really sure, And then we have people that are just kind of getting into it. Erica says she's getting back into mediumship. Well, that's great. Welcome back. Al says, let me mute my tab. Al says, had some technical difficulties. Oh, that's okay. Hi, Al. Good to see you. So, one great way, no matter whether you've been doing mediumship for 1,000 years or, it's something that you're kind of just getting into, a great way to kind of dip your toe into the mediumship waters is to do mediumship with the help of tarot cards. And you're going to run into people that think that you can't do mediumship with tarot cards, and then you're going to run into people like me who say you can do whatever you want. I'm on the you can do whatever you want, and no matter what you do, it's still legitimate. No matter what you do, if you're doing tarot cards or oracle cards, or if you're using a pendulum, or if you're using some other type of divination in conjunction with mediumship, you can actually, if you want this spread, you can actually use this for whatever you want. Just we're going to be using it for tarot today. You can also use it just as a bullet point checklist to kind of go through and ask questions while you're doing mediumship readings and you're not using divination or cards or anything like that. You can simply just hit these questions, and then you kind of have a frame of reference of how a mediumship reading could go. Dabbled in inconsistency. Okay, so it sounds like you need a really good spread, so that's what I'm going to give you today. So this is my all-purpose spread. This is a spread that I've personally used for years and years. This is just a spread that I literally made up. It's just after the culmination of doing mediumship readings for people, I kind of really got an idea of like what people were wanting to know. What are kind of like the aspects to a mediumship reading that make a good mediumship reading versus a great mediumship reading. And so there are different aspects to it, and this spread is intentionally created to hit these different aspects to it. So I just want to walk you through the spread really quickly, and just to get everybody on the same page, and just kind of show you what we're going to be doing and why, and just kind of explain some of the spread position before we actually get into the actual reading. So the very first thing I've learned is that when you're doing a mediumship reading, to really calm people's nerves, or to put them in a place of, put them in a position where they're open to the information instead of being resistant to the information, is to give some identifiable traits, right? Because first we want to open ourselves up, and of course you can light a candle, you can do whatever you want. Basically, when it comes to mediumship, I have office hours, which means that whenever because in the beginning, I really had issues with like spirits coming to me all hours of the night, like spirits waking me up, coming into my dreams. And like, there was some serious boundary issues when it came to spirits, because once you turn yourself onto that, and they can see you, they recognize that you have a gift, they recognize that you are a channel. And so you're going to have very persistent spirits that are going to come and bother you, basically. And so the very first thing I did was I set up office hours. My office hours are only when I invite that communication in, right? Sometimes I'll still have spirits come to me in my dreams, but it's mostly family members. I've had some really amazing spirit dreams with family members before. Sometimes I will pick up on spirits, but I won't necessarily, like, I see them, they see me, but like I'm not making contact, if that makes sense. It's just a way to kind of, you have to think about the spirits in more of an astral form. So what I have done is I've created an astral office. And my astral office is a place I go in my mind. It's a meeting place that I will go to meet spirits instead of having spirits like come to me, because I don't want ghosts in my house. I don't want spirits in my house. I don't want any of that stuff. Like, I just want to live in peace, but I still want to make myself available during mediumship readings. So I have an astral room, basically an astral office created in my mindscape, my mental scape. It's a thought form if you're into magic. And it's a place where I will astrally travel to or journey to meet them. And so that's the first thing I do is I'll go to my office, I'll go to my place where it's like, okay, now I'm actually open to communication, right? Danny says, I think that's what I'm worried about, the spirits at all hours. So you really need to have firm boundaries with mediumship, especially if you're going to be doing it quite often, and create yourself some sort of astral room or astral office that you basically put off the energy, you close yourself to it. When you're not in your office, you're not available. When you're in your office, you're available, right? Erica says, I have had spirits wanting to talk right as I'm falling asleep. Yeah, because you're in between that state. You're in between being asleep and being awake. So you're in that twilight state, and it's really easy to communicate with spirits. And actually, if you want to learn more about that, Marissa just popped in here. She works a lot with dream work and mediumship, and with dream work and ancestor work and things like that. So check out some of her content. She has some really great stuff for you to check out. So the first thing I do mentally to prepare is I go to my astral office. I say, okay, I'm open for business, and I just wait. I wait for that presence. And I will actually, my astral office is not, it is someplace outside of myself, but it is within myself at the same time, if that makes sense. So I will go there in my mind, but I will actually pick up on spirits in a very physical way. I might begin to smell them. I might begin to hear them. I might begin to feel them. Going through all of your clairs, you're going to start interpreting psychic information. If you can feel them on the hotlines. Oh yeah, absolutely. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter the medium, doesn't matter the platform, it doesn't matter what type of reading it is. For me, it's all the same. It doesn't really change. It's just the way that it's delivered changes. And so then the very first thing people really want to know, clients want to know, is that, and that you're talking to the right person, right? Because how many of you have done mediumship readings where you go to your astral space or whatever your process is, you get there, and then all of a sudden there's like 7 or 8 people there, and they're all wanting to talk at the same time, and you're picking up on different, aunt whatever is talking about this, and grandma's talking about this, you know what I mean? And so if you struggle with that, this is a way that I kind of like zero in on the exact person. Also, I don't really believe in demons per se. I don't really believe in demons. It's not something I don't believe that there are like baneful, like fallen angels or anything like that. I do believe that there are mischievous spirits though. And I do believe that there are spirits that for entertainment can actually come through and present themselves as someone else. And I don't think that they can actually, really harm anybody, but it is good to have like that knowledge. So the first thing I do is I try to pick up on 1, 2, or 3 identifiable aspects of like what they look like or what their personality was like. And that's what I like to confirm with the client, especially if you're going to do this in real time. If you're not going to do it in real time, that's fine. You don't have to do that, but that's something that I like to do. And then after we have, you see, space 1, 2, and 3. These are all like traits about that person that only that person would represent. And so you are like locking on to that target, right? And then 4 is the client and deceased relationship prior to passing. So this is where we're going to talk about what their relationship was like. And by all means, you can pull more clarifying cards on this if you want to. So you could literally pull, like 3 or 4 cards per position if you wanted to. We would be here for 3 hours if, teaching this method, if we did that. So we're just going to stick to 1 card. But if you wanted to, you could keep pulling clarifying cards to get more context and more nuance to that relationship. But, if you read purely intuitively, meaning you just read the pictures on the cards or you just channel information, depending on how open you are, you could get quite a bit of information, or you could find yourself that you need more cards to get more information. I'm actually a trained tarot reader in that I studied the esoteric kind of part of tarot for a very long time. And in fact, I didn't read intuitively until much, much later into actually reading professionally. In the beginning, I read purely esoterically, which means that I read numerology, astrology, elemental dignities, that sort of thing. And I am going to work some of that into here today. So, some things that I say about certain cards might be over your head a little bit. That's okay. I want you to kind of work through it. I actually have 2 workshops on www.theprofitablepsychic.com. I have the Numerology of Tarot and I have the Astrology of Tarot. And those are freaking amazing workshops. Like, I seriously wish that I had those back when I was just starting out. because it just makes it so, there's just so much information in there. And towards the end of this workshop, I will go ahead and, post a link into there, and then you guys can pick that up or pick one of them up if you want to. And then, so we're going to do 4 is the client's and the deceased relationship prior to passing, okay? And then number 5 is the client and the deceased relationship after passing. So what has changed? 6, the deceased karmic lessons learned. So what have they learned now that they're on the other side, right? Number 7 is guidance and final parting words. So basically, is there any advice? This is also a really good time where if you wanted to, you could pull some extra oracle cards. If you have the Doreen Virtue and James Van Prague, I think it's James Van Prague. It's the Talking to Heaven oracle cards. That's a really nice deck that sometimes I'll get out and I'll use that as well. It just has like really cute, not cute, that's a wrong word. It has really nice, like lovely messages of encouragement on there. And it's just nice to kind of add that in if you would like to, or some other type of mediumship deck that you might have. And if you do know of any, let me know in the comments below and let us know, which oracle decks that you like to use for mediumship. And then finally, number 8 is the answer to the client's question. So even if the client comes to you and they don't actually present a question, there's still the question. And every client wants to know, let me know in the comments below what you think everybody wants to know. What is the one thing, mediums, what is the one thing that clients want to know about their loved one that has passed on? I'll give you guys just a minute to kind of answer that. Okay, so I'm going to put you guys over on the other screen, and then I'm going to pull up the spread over here so I can have a better view of it. All right, so we are going to start with card position 1. Are they happy? Are they okay? That they're at peace? Yeah. Are they okay in heaven? Do they forgive me? Yep. That's basically the question that all clients have, even if they don't ask you a question. That's what they really want to know, right? So we're going to work on 1, 2, and 3 for right now. So if you can't see this clearly, I'm going to tell you what the cards are. So you might want to write this down if you have a piece of paper. Hey, Brittany, good to see you. The first card is the Sun. The second card is the High Priestess. And the third card is the 5 of Swords, okay? So this is an interactive training, so I really want you guys to interact as much as you can. Write your comments, what you think about, the cards, or what you think they're saying in the comment section. I really want to know, because there's so many talented people in here that, I'm not going to be able to cover all of the really great insights that can be revealed by this spread. And so let's go ahead and build it together. All right. So don't be scared of saying anything wrong. You can't say, there's nothing wrong that you can say. And don't be embarrassed if you have a little bit of information or a lot of information, whether you have just a couple keywords or whether, a couple sentences come to you. Just let us know. I want you guys to participate in this. So the very first thing we want to do is we want to connect with the identifiable traits. So what are some keywords for the Sun? Let me know in the comments below. So when I think of the Sun, I think of in terms of a person, right? Because the card position is a personality trait or a physical aspect, okay? And while you guys are typing that in the comments, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about the reading that we're doing today. So several years ago, I had a client come to me, and she had a kind of tumultuous relationship with her mother. Her mother was a little bit abusive to her, emotionally abusive. And she came from a background in her culture and her religion where, there was like arranged marriages and things like that. Well, my client basically rebelled against her parents, and she didn't want to go through with the arranged marriage and things like that. And she said that her relationship with her mother was really strained all throughout their life, right? And so she wanted to do a tarot reading with me to see what her mother has to say. And so this reading is about a mother. It's about a mother and her daughter relationship. Okay. Optimism, young at heart. Aw, thank you, Danny. Oh, okay, Julie, no problem. Hey, Emily, this is a great spread. What you can do is enough. It is always enough. So whenever I think of the sun, I think of a really big personality and a big persona. I think of someone who really likes to be at the center of attention. I think of someone who has an overall sort of positive or optimistic kind of energy about them. I think of someone who really, they walk into a room and the room just kind of lights up, right? Cece says, young, child, life of the party personality, maybe a Leo. Yep. Very good. Very good. So when we look at the sun and we look at the numerology of the sun, so the sun is number 19, right? And if we reduce 19, we get 10. And then if we further reduce 10, we get 1. So the numerology, when it comes to the sun and what it means, is the number one is someone who is a born leader, right? And so this makes me think that the sun in this specific position means that she was probably the matriarch of the family, that she likely was the leader of the family, and that she kind of wore the pants perhaps in the relationship with her husband. Number ones are also really about independence. So this is likely someone who is very independent. It's likely someone that didn't really let a lot of people do anything for them. They had kind of like their own ideas about how things should be done. It was kind of like maybe that kind of energy where you're like, nobody can do it better than I can, so I might as well do it. That's very much me. You know what I mean? I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that. Shiny spotlight, yes. Likes attention. Look at me. All eyes on me. Yeah, for sure. And if we think about the sun, so the sun in astrology and tarot cards is it the sun or is it Leo? Let me double check real quick. This is why you need my PDF because not even I remember all this stuff. It's nice to have it here. Planets in the ruling signs. Yeah, so the sun is the sun. So when you guys think about the sun in terms of astrology, yeah, Monique, you're right. Can be my way or the highway for sure. It could definitely be that kind of energy for sure. Is there a negative, but we say that, but is there a negative tone to it? Not quite yet. There's not really a negative tone to it yet. But it's just the kind of person that they are. So when we think about the sun, we think about like our self-image, our life purpose, the way we kind of express ourselves is a little bit different than the ascendant. The ascendant is like how you express yourself physically, but the sun is like how you express yourself as you make your way through the world. Like what is it that you want the world to know about you? It's kind of like your legacy in a way. But the sun is like your life force, you know, it has a lot to do with your health and vitality. So we could say that this is overall probably a fairly healthy person. This is probably someone that has a lot of vitality, someone who's very concerned about their self-image. Okay. So number 2 is the High Priestess. So what are some key words about the High Priestess? When I think of the High Priestess, I think of someone who is perhaps not quite, who is emotional, who does have emotions, but doesn't quite wear those emotions. Maybe perhaps, you know, the High Priestess is kind of known for being cold in a way. So the High Priestess could mean that maybe her mother didn't really, you know, show her or have a lot of emotional connection with her, right? I also think of the High Priestess as someone who is extremely intelligent, like almost too smart for their own good. Someone who also perhaps keeps secrets, maybe doesn't divulge the whole story for, you know, for everything that happens. I think of someone who also has possibly psychic abilities of their own, right? Hey, Zoe. Free-spirited, confidence, yes. Intuitive, wise, potentially psychic, very good. Very good. No, Zoe, I actually bumped it up. I bumped up the time, so that's my fault. You can blame me. Secretive, yeah, someone who could be a little secretive, right? Someone who, you know, the RX side of the High Priestess could certainly be someone who is perhaps a little conniving or a little conspiring in some ways. Not in a negative way, not like the Seven of Swords, but just in the way that they don't reveal everything. They keep some cards, you know, to themselves. So when I think about the numerology for the High Priestess numerology is number 2. So two is about self-awareness, right? So it's someone who is very self-aware, someone who is very intelligent, kind of backs up what we've already kind of said. I do know that 2s can be a little codependent, right? So I don't know if this makes sense to a lot of you, but I have done a lot of work on the mother wound, and especially with clients. And I've noticed that there is a kind of bizarre relationship pattern that can kind of happen. This was my grandmother to me. Like I went through this with my grandmother, where they would intentionally withhold emotional connection because for basically a way to get what they want out of a relationship, to get someone to respond in a certain way. So they can be quite withholding when it comes to emotional stuff, but at the same time, they do it in a way that's like really codependent. Like they're expecting that person is going, they're expecting that because if they withhold that they're going to inevitably you know, manipulate that situation, manipulate that relationship into receiving it. And it's like this weird, like codependent sort of dynamic. Hey, Susie, no problem. No problem. Introverted is a really great word. Yeah. So isn't that a little interesting? So looking at the Sun and the High Priestess, what could we say about that? Because those 2 cards are kind of on opposite sides of the spectrum, aren't they? Like the Sun is very extroverted, where the High Priestess is quite introverted. So what could we say about that? Could we say that this person maybe had a little bit of perhaps mania, maybe was a little bit of a conflicting person, maybe on the outside wanted to everybody to think that she was the life of the party, or that she was a really confident, positive person, but you know, on the internal spectrum, she was more of an introvert, right? So there was that conflict there. So she wants everybody else to think that she's outgoing, but really she's more of a reserved person. And I think we can all kind of relate to that a little bit, because there's, you know, the Sun, the self that we project out, and then the High Priestess is the moon, is that self that we keep to ourselves. So the astrology for the High Priestess is the moon, And in astrology, the moon represents the inner self, right? It represents who the person is really on the inside, like what they need to be happy, like what they do for their own self-care, what they do for their own mental health. It's also like our moods, our overall internal kind of demeanor. So Svetlana says she put on a mask. She did. She did, didn't she? Very interesting. Very interesting. So number 3. So one more card. We're going to get another aspect of her personality to really start to begin to understand who this person is and make sure that we're talking to the right person, right? So a personality trait is number 3, the 5 of Swords. Well, so what could we say about the 5 of Swords when it comes to someone's personality? Perhaps she was someone that was quite argumentative, right? Air Swords is the mental scape, so the perspective is the way we think about the world, right? Our judgments. So maybe there was a lot of conflict that she had with her daughter when it came to how basically she viewed the world, right? When I think about the 5 of Swords, I also think about the person that takes it just a little too far, or says that, digs deep to find that one thing that they know is going to cut you, right? Because their intention is to hurt you. They don't want to, it's almost kind of like abusive in a way, right? Like verbal abuse. Hi, Kimberly. Self-defeating. Yeah. Argumentative, win at all costs. Yeah. And it's sort of like, whether she was right or wrong, that really wasn't a factor. She was going to make her opinion known. And, also with the High Priestess, the High Priestess is quite judgmental and opinionated as well, right? And so is the 5 of Swords. So that kind of backs it up. So when we think about this woman's personality, and we have these 3 different traits here, we have the one sun and the 2 kind of reserved kind of cards. So what could we say? What could we say about that? Like, what was the total of her personality? Like, maybe she wanted to come off as really positive. Maybe she thought she had the best of intentions, but really she was a little bit manipulative. She was a little bit secretive. She was a little bit withholding of emotion. And she definitely knew how to, spark a fight. Or if she wasn't getting that love, if she wasn't getting that manipulation actually working out in her favor, then she knew that she could start some type of conflict with the client. And, it's kind of like just a really dysfunctional relationship, right? Al says, wasn't afraid to say deuces when a person or situation wasn't working, right? Oh, jealousy. Monique. I could see jealousy as being a combo of all 3. Social sniper. That's a good one. Angry 5 from her past priestess. Yeah. Angry from her past. So maybe, her life didn't necessarily measure up to what she thought it was going to, right? So when we think about the 5, the 5s are about harmony and rebellion, right? So the 5 is the rebel of the numbers. It's the mover and shaker. It's the revolutionary, right? So when I think of 5, I think of someone who, the 5s are always in between 2 different places. So the 5s really recognize the need for rules and structure, but then they also rebel against those rules and those structures. So it almost seems like she was kind of conflicted internally, whether with, what she thought perhaps was like the rules for a good life or what's expected of her daughter. But then on the other hand, like she kind of secretly probably also saw why her daughter felt, why her daughter felt the way she felt and could actually empathize with that as well. But she's between these two, extremes of what's expected culturally and, what's been done for years and years, thousands of years, and what, the conflict, the rebellion that's also within her. She tried to get dirt on people or buttons to push to have bargaining chips. Svetlana, a really good one. Marissa says, a person who is really self-interested and uses her sensitivity to say cutting things when she feels she's not important. Yeah, yeah. So when I think about the astrology of the Five of Swords, it is Venus and Aquarius. So Venus is, it's basically the seeking pleasure. It's about what makes us feel good, right? So in relationships, we have Venus and Mars, and we have Mars we know is the lusty counterpart to Venus. That Mars is like competition, it's how we respond to conflict, it's like our ambitions and things like that. Venus is more about the softer side of that, about how we love and how we nurture and how we feel loved and how we feel nurtured, right? And Venus is about harmony. It's about seeking harmony with our surroundings, within ourselves, right? And so when it's in Aquarius, Aquarius is a highly intelligent sign, but and focuses really on the group or the collective, right? But it can be a little bit emotionally detached on a personal one-on-one level. So Venus in Aquarius could mean that she was detached on an emotional level. She maybe perhaps didn't give her daughter the emotional nurturance that her daughter really needed, or she withheld that, right? So we kind of see how when we go through the numbers and the astrology and stuff like that, it just kind of actually backs stuff up, and it just gives a little bit more context and really makes it really, really clear what the cards are saying here. Hi, Lynn. Good to see you. Manipulative. Yeah. Hey, Mario. Good to see you. Okay. Very good. So, does anybody have anything else to say about 1, 2, and 3? Anything about the type of woman that she was? What was important to her? And then we're going to go ahead and move on to 4, which is the client and deceased relationship prior to passing. And that is the 4 of Pentacles. Marissa says, can be chilly, have also made a person interested in metaphysical stuff. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So what do you think of when you think about the 4 of Pentacles when it comes to a relationship with someone? I think of someone who might be a little bit selfish, someone who might be a little bit withholding, someone who might be a little bit stubborn, perhaps, right? Because we see this guy, right? And he's holding on this coin. And so he's got 2 coins under his feet. He's holding 1 coin in his hand, and he's balancing a coin on his head. Boundaries and possessive. Those are really good, really great words. Yeah. So the client and deceased relationship prior to passing, we could say perhaps that there was poor boundaries probably on both sides. Her mother might have been a little bit possessive of her. Financial dependence. That's a really good one, Cece. So it could say that her mother might have even been a little bit financially dependent upon her. Or is that possession? Yeah. So the numerology is 4 because it's the 4 of Pentacles. So when I think about 4s, I think about structure and discipline, right? It's about order. 4s are about order and foundation. Yes? And so when we think about 4s, we often will think about the emperor. And so when we think about the emperor, it's someone who, because I always relate the minors back to the majors. That's another thing that I do as well. How does this relate to the overall energy of the majors, right? So I think of someone who is quite protective, but I also think of someone who could be tyrannical given, the right circumstances. That kind of goes back to my way or the highway, kind of what we were talking about earlier. Could we say that the relationship was a little too secure? And that it was a little bit suffocating, perhaps. Is that something we could say? Could we say that our client perhaps maybe didn't feel safe in the relationship with her mother? Because 4 is all about security, right? And so obviously this card has a little bit of a negative tone to it, right? It has a hoarding kind of tone to it. So could we say that her mother tried to protect her a little bit too much, was maybe perhaps overprotective? So if we think about the astrology is Sun in Capricorn. So thinking back to the sun, it's our self-image, right? It's how we fit into the world. Now, when we think of Capricorn, Capricorns are very diligent, aren't they? Capricorns are like the teachers, the stern teachers. They're very diligent. They're professionally oriented. They don't play around too much. It's a lot of work, little play, right? And so sometimes almost to the detriment of the Capricorn, right? They kind of miss out on some fun things sometimes if they got their nose too busy in their work. Oh, yeah. Mario says security that is manipulative. Conditional, right? It's a conditional love. It's a you have to do this or you have to be this to receive my love. Yeah. Yep. So that kind of talks about the relationship with the client and the deceased prior to passing. Okay. Now let's go over to the other side here and let's look at number 5. Okay. So number 5 is the client and the deceased relationship after her mother passed. It's the star. So what are some key words for the star? Whenever I think of the star, I think of recovery, hope, healing, balancing, kind of like temperance in a way. But it's quite healing, isn't it? It's a lot different than the 4 of Pentacles. So let's just compare and contrast those two for a moment, right? So on one side we have the 4 of Pentacles and he's clinging on to his coins for dear life. The star, on the other hand, is giving away resources, isn't she? She's just freely giving away resources, knowing that there's an unlimited supply. Hi, Mary. Good to see you. Kind of interesting how those two cards kind of are polar opposites, aren't they? So on one hand, we have, clinging on to something for dear life. And then we have the star pouring out the water. Have you ever tried to cling on to water? You can't. It just flows through your fingers, right? So what we could say about the star in regards to the client and the deceased relationship after passing is that their relationship got a lot better, didn't it? Cece says free. Yeah. They're both free, right? Al says cleansing. Yeah, it was a cleansing and an inheritance potentially, for sure. Especially with all those stars around there. Yeah. Absolutely. So the star's numerology is 8. You take 17, you reduce it down to 8. 1 plus 7 is 8. Al, I think you're right on the money there because literally, pun intended, right? Because 8 is about our legacy. 8's about what we've built in our life. It has the energy of what do we want to be remembered for, And so when I think of the star in terms of 8, I think that number 1, her mother was satisfied with how, more or less satisfied with how she left things or, the life that she wanted for her daughter. But I think also at the same time, on the other side, I also feel that she's also satisfied with her daughter not following in her footsteps, right? There's kind of like this energy of it is what it is, and either way, I'm proud of you, and I love you, and maybe these are some things that I couldn't say while I was on earth because I was limited by my earthly ego. I couldn't see beyond. And that's something that in mediumship readings that, with clients, that clients do want to know is that do they have a different perspective, now that they've passed on and they can see things from a higher perspective, right? Very interesting. Monique says mental freedom, higher vibration of thought, relief from the mental stress. Yeah. There's a peace, Erica says. It does feel quite peaceful, doesn't it? There's a peace on both sides. Like, maybe they didn't agree, but there's been a truce, right? They're both kind of waving that white flag and they're making a truce. Very good. And again, the star is also in astrology is Aquarius. We've kind of already talked about Aquarius, but it's for, the higher good of everybody, kind of. All right, let's move on to number 6. The deceased karmic lessons learned. So what did this person learn? What did her mother learn while she was on the earthly plane? What part of her karma did she learn about, right? Because especially if you believe in ancestral karma or ancestral vows or ancestral cleansing and things like that, if you work with ancestors a lot, I do personally. When we think about karma that our ancestors hold or carry, that we inherit, whether physically through our DNA or simply through the beliefs, the cultural beliefs, the religious beliefs, that sort of thing. Our parents' limiting beliefs about how the world works. What are some things that we could say about the 8 of Swords? Mario says death can bring just as much transformation for the people left behind. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. I agree with that. And sometimes you will find that some people have a better relationship with their ancestors once they're on the other side rather than when they were here on the earthly plane. That's true for a lot of people. So whenever I think of the 8 of Swords, I think of someone who, well, she's bound, isn't she? She's bound. She's got swords. She's got danger around her. She's bound. She's got a blindfold over her face. So could she say perhaps that maybe she was blind to a lot of the problems that perhaps she caused for people? Or she was blind to a lot of the conflict that, was between her and her daughter? Could we also say that she bound herself in her beliefs and she was too scared to step outside of her own culture, her own traditions, and her own thoughts about that? Cassandra, the urge to break generational chains left to the person. Yeah, right? Really good one. Really good. So when I think about the 8 of Swords, I think about the number 8, right? And 8, again, just like the star, it's about power and authority, and it's about your legacy and your inheritance, right? So it has a lot to do with the karma. Al says she learned to overcome her own doubts and insecurities at the end. I agree with that one, absolutely. Marissa says absolutely, and maybe projected a lot onto her daughter. So so let's talk about that for a moment, because I think that's a really big piece of this. Why do we project, tarot readers? Why do we project? Why do people in general project? Because of self-denial, right? We project our limitations onto other people because we deny potentials within ourselves, correct? That's one reason we project. But so could you say that all of the hardship and all of the conflict that she, made her daughter kind of go through was in essence just her projection based on her own limiting beliefs about, about all the things, that she felt her daughter should have done with her life. And so there's an energy of taking responsibility, isn't there? They don't look inside, right, Al? And so perhaps she's saying, now that I'm on the other side, I see how I had my blinders on. I see how I was so narrowly focused on this one thing that at the end it didn't even really matter, did it? Marissa says, because she was so hemmed in with those swords, couldn't see herself. Yeah, fear, absolutely. And Erica, she's maybe even talking about how she's accepting that a lot of the conflict was her own irrational fears. Yeah, absolutely. So, Eight of Swords is Jupiter and Gemini. So Jupiter, it has a lot to do with our inheritances, our physical inheritances, like money, property, assets, things like that. But also our spiritual inheritances as well. And also our social position. So Jupiter is kind of like the caste that we're kind of born into, right? And so we know that from the beginning of this reading that this is a culture, my client is from a culture that does have some sort of caste system or some, arranged marriage and some views on society in regards to social position and caste and things like that. When it's in Gemini, so when I think about Gemini is very inquisitive. Gemini is communicative. Gemini is sometimes a little superficial as well, right? Gemini would be like small talk. It's not, doesn't really go too deep. There's a lot of small talk. It doesn't go too deep, but at the same time, it can be a little like, it kind of lacks a certain depth, right? So how do you think that actually adds nuance and meaning to the Eight of Swords? Hey, Jessica, good to see you. Could it mean that now that she's on the other side, she sees how superficial her beliefs about, the caste system and social position and stuff like that was? Marissa says, sometimes people associate Jupiter and Gemini with not knowing your own mind and listening too much to others. Sure, yeah. Yeah. Well, Jupiter's not really of the mind. It can be in regards to in regards to what your beliefs are about, your social position, the caste, your ideas about prosperity, like what you're owed kind of mentality. So not listening to her, Marissa, what I think you're saying is that she was not listening to herself. She was listening to what everybody else was saying, probably her parents and her grandparents, right? Hey, Mel, good to see you. So yeah, absolutely, Marissa. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to 7. So 7 is guidance and final parting words. And in this position, we have the Queen of Wands. So it's like she gives in a little bit, but then she's right back to, but I'm going to do what I want anyways. So when I think of the Queen of Wands, I think of someone who is quite confident, who is extroverted, who is someone who is going to do what they want to do when they want to do it. Someone who makes up their own kind of rules to life, someone who's quite ambitious, right? But we could also read it in 2 ways, honestly. We could read it as, kind of like her parting words, but we can also read it as her parting words to my client, her daughter, right? And so could we perhaps say that she's proud of her daughter for being an ambitious go-getter, that she's proud of her daughter for being a strong woman? Marissa says, me. Right? Al says, as in life, so in death. She's a bad bitch still. Also someone for the client to call on for spell work. Ooh. Yes. For sure. For sure. So a very powerful asset on the other side, right? But yeah, she's still pretty bad, isn't she? She's a baddie. Marissa says, in that case, she wants her daughter to really live her own life. That's beautiful, Marissa. She wants her daughter to live her own life. She wants her to be an independent, tenacious woman. Right? So for me, how I work the court cards when it comes to astrology, for me, Queen of Wands is Leo. Depends on, what system you use, but we're just going to use my system for this. So whenever I think of Leo, as far as the astrology goes, oh, and I didn't do the numerology. So the numerology for queens is 33. So pages are 11, knights are 22, queens are 33, kings are 44. Okay? That's just kind of how I do it. So master number 33 is the nurturer, right? So could she also be saying that I know I couldn't give you the nurturing, the emotional nurturance that you needed while I was here on the earth plane, but I'm willing and able to give that to you now. Erica says, you've got this. I'm behind you. I support you. I stand behind you. You can count on me, right? You may have not been able to count on me in life, but in passing, you can count on me now, This is a really good reading, you guys. Absolutely. So whenever I think of Leo, it kind of comes back to the sun, doesn't it? It kind of loops us back around to the sun, because the sun and Leo are kind of like the same thing. The sun is the ruler of Leo. So whenever I think of Leo, I think of someone who is, again, someone who wants to be the center of attention, someone who is very outwardly expressive, right? And funny. The Queen of Wands is always funny. Al says, fierce protector ancestor. Yeah. So it kind of loops back around, doesn't it? Kind of goes right back to the beginning. So could we also say that she's more authentic in the afterlife? That she's more of herself, that she's transcended these limiting beliefs, she's transcended her thoughts about, the way that life should be lived, and she's moved on from that, and maybe she's transcended to actually finally, becoming the person that she always projected out that she wanted to be. Monique says your client may also have an opportunity to take her power back now. Yeah. And she's kind of offering that to my client, isn't she? She's saying, you know what? I was wrong all these years. For sure. Okay. So let's go ahead and move on to the last and final card here. And the last and final card, 8, is the answer to the client's questions. So what is the question? The question is, are they okay? And in this specific reading, the question was, does my mother regret how she treated me? Okay. That was the question that my client asked. Does my mother regret how she treated me? So what do you think the answer to that is? The card is the 9 of Swords. Does she regret how she treated her daughter? Yeah, right? Major, big time. She has a lot of regrets. It could even be that, while she was here, she had many nights where she thought about it and it pained her, and she cried about it, and it kept her up all night sometimes about, how she maybe treated her daughter. But overall, there's an overwhelming yes. She definitely regrets how she treated her daughter. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? She regrets it, definitely. Yeah. And so that's the point in which we give our client the closure, right? 7 and 8 are probably the most important, right? Because all of the other cards leading up to this point is just basically validating and verifying. Yes? But do you see how all of these different parts of the reading kind of lead us to that final answering that question? And do you guys see now where there is closure in this reading? So think about, put yourself into my client's shoes. You know, think about if this was your own mother that had passed on, or maybe you even have a similar relationship, maybe not like the same, but maybe you have a similar relationship with a parent, mother or father. Now think about if your mother or father had passed on, or if your mother and father has passed on, and think about, you know, what would change for you in your life if you received this type of reading, right? Venus and Aquarius, Mars and Gemini is tough combo, at least to me. Yeah, it's they're both kind of detached, aren't they? Mario says I came in too late. Oh no, Mario, this is a reading. He says I didn't mean to be humorous, but actually this is an eons old reading. This reading's probably 4 or 5 years old. So this is not like this is that person's not here. Erica says could feel embarrassed figure on the card covering their face. Oh yeah, for sure. She's definitely remorseful, isn't she? Definitely. So if this was a client of yours, what would you tell your client to do? What is something that you could tell your client to do? What is like, you know, maybe they could set up an ancestor altar to their mother. Someone said earlier that they could call on their mother for spell work. So after this reading, now that this reading is done, what could we tell this client to do? Well, number one, what I would say number one is tell your client that she can forgive herself for anything that she feels is her fault in regards to the relationship with her mother. That's number one. I don't know if she forgive her mother. That's a whole other thing, right? The forgiveness, something like that, even though the parent on the other side is quite remorseful and sees the error of their ways, it doesn't necessarily mean that things are going to be, perfect moving forward. There's still a process to forgiveness. But what we can tell the client is to perhaps work on first forgiving themselves for anything that, and release that stress in some way, Candle magic might be good for sure. Maybe like a self-love ritual we could give out. We could also do something like, we could ask our clients to purchase their own. We could recommend an oracle card, right? Or some type of oracle card deck that we could offer to them to go purchase on their own, that they wanted to talk to their mother at any time. They could just pull a card from this deck and they could have a communication with their mother to keep the communication open if that's something that they want. Oh, Tina says, I often tell my clients to write them a letter to the person that's upset them. Wow. That's a really, really good one. Monique says, give her the tools for dealing with any guilt about how she feels about her mother. Yeah, we could even send them to a hotline. We could even give them a hotline number for grief. Writing sounds good with all that air energy. Yeah. Or maybe, do something like a memento, like when people have passed on, like some things that we do is, in my family, my family is a family of pilots. And so something that we do is, in my family is my grandfather used to be a Air Force pilot, and all of my uncles at some point in time learned to get their license. So sometimes what the family will do is they'll rent a plane and they'll go take a ride on a plane. Or we've put a lot of my ancestors into a specific lake off of the Colorado River. And so sometimes we'll go there to connect with them. I also have a lot of my ancestors we've bought memorial plaques, and we put them at like parks and, things like that. So we have a place like, for example, my grandmother or my grandfather, we have a specific bench in a specific park on the lake where we put their ashes that we can go to, and we can sit there and connect. So, talk about maybe certain things that they can do to create a safe container where they can commune with her mother, or where they can have their thing or their spot, you know. Rose quartz crystal for healing. Very good, Erica. Al says, I would tell her to do a ceremony with candles and flowers with their mom's photo to either elevate and let go or make space in her home for ongoing spiritual work. Perfect. Perfect. I would then offer one of my other services like clearing their energies. Perfect, Pamela. Jessica says, also a bay leaf or parchment cauldron spell to burn the negative feelings away and let the smoke be released out the window. Perfect. Perfect. So let me know in the comments below, what is the one thing really that you walked away from this training with? Because I'm always wondering, you know, how these trainings are helping you guys. If there's anything that you would like to say about the spread, or if there's any final thoughts or comments, are there any questions that anybody has about any of the card positions, or you know, if you guys want to start thinking about how to do these readings on your own, is there anything that you would like to know? I'm going to go ahead and open the floor for just a few moments for comments and questions. If you do not have a comment and question, I hope you have a wonderful Friday. Happy full moon. And thank you so much for coming and participating. I hope you got a lot out of this. By the way, now that I'm thinking about it, give me just 1 second. I'm going to link you guys to some of my workshops. I am getting ready to redo next week the Give the Most Epic Tarot readings for Halloween. I'm getting ready to update that. You'll have to excuse the cobwebs. The landing page is quite dusty. I'm getting ready to redo that. Mario says, I love this. I can't wait to listen to it again. Al says, this is great, organizing what's coming through instead of being all over the place. Yeah, that's kind of the trick to mediumship, isn't it? This has been fantastic. Thank you. You're welcome. Marissa says, love the layout. Also on the hotlines, would you tell the client about her mother projecting? You know, I would say as long as the client is willing to stay on the other end of the line. When it comes to mediumship readings, you know, I think it's one of those types of readings that people aren't going to come in with, like, you know, 3 minutes on their account. I think people, when they come for mediumship readings, they kind of expect to be there for a little while. So I would say if something comes to you, then just let it come to you. Also, I have 2 other classes that I wanted to link in here for you guys. If you have the mentors, if you are in the Make Tarot Your Business mentorship program, you already have this. Do not buy it. Let's see. So we have the Astrology of Tarot. And then we also have the Numerology of Tarot. So I recommend, if you liked the way that I pulled additional information out of this little mini workshop here, using the numbers and the astrology, this is how I do it. This is basically gives you everything that you need to know to how to do that. All right. You're welcome, Lou Ann. Thanks for coming. You're welcome, Zoe. I hope you guys have a great Friday, and I will see you guys next week for the Trusted Tarot Reader to Spiritual Life Coach 6-month program. Our next class is on Monday, and it's not too late to join in. You can join in. We are just starting to really talk about like signature sessions and how to create a coaching package and so much more. So I'll link to that real quick as well. You're welcome. Bye guys. Have a good Friday.